Hello, Michelle. Welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to have you here. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, awesome. So, we asked Michelle to come on the podcast because now that we're approaching November, it's kind of the, cliche time to be thankful and practice gratitude. And Michelle kind of has some expertise in this. And so we wanted her to kind of share what it is that she does. So, Michelle, can you give our listeners an overview of what you teach and what you do?
You bet. I am a mindfulness instructor. So I go into elementary schools and I teach students how mindfulness and breathing techniques can help them in their day to day life. And I also teach a course for adults and I'm a life coach. So I get to be able to work with people on the day to day, young and old, to help them with what's happening in their life and trying to help them refocus on what they want to focus on.
Love it. And so for maybe some of those listeners, what is like the importance of mindfulness? What is mindfulness, right? We hear that word thrown out a lot, and I don't know if a lot of people really, on a deeper level, know what that means. So can you break that down for us?
Sure. I think a lot of times you're right. We hear the word mindfulness and sometimes we even use it. We know in context what it means. We say, oh, I want to be mindful about that. But a lot of times when we try to break it down, we're kind of like, well, it means mindful, like you're not exactly sure what you're saying, but you know why you're saying it. So mindfulness is a really special way of paying attention. So it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. And so that without judgment part can kind of sound a little bit like, I don't really get that. So another way of saying it is taking things as it is in the moment. So instead of saying this moment is bad or good, it's just what it is. And I'm going to learn to see it as just that versus trying to judge myself or others and kind of having that hard edge to what an experience or a feeling or a thought looks like. So being mindful about something is paying attention to what you're doing in that moment with kindness. It's kind of a
Mm.
way of thinking about what it is. If in general you're like, oh, I'm not exactly sure, that's kind of where we want to start.
That's
So
interesting. The non-judgment part is interesting to me. I am just curious on what the significance of that would be. Like, why would it be important not to place judgment on something when you're being mindful and just recognizing it for what it is?
a big part of, I think, our day-to-day life is we're really good at practicing meanness. When we think of practicing, we usually think of something that we want to get better at, right? And so we're like, oh, I really want to be really good at playing an instrument or a sport or something like that. But at the same time, we practice negative self-talk probably every day. Or we practice things like, man, that person did not do well on their presentation, or my coworker really didn't do well on that sub. Like we're really good at practicing being mean. We just don't think about it that way. And so when we think about being mindful, if we're judging harshly, especially our experiences, we're not really seeing them for what they are, but we're seeing them for what we believe that they should be or could be, or we've put an expectation on them somehow. So being able to soften that and realize that we're going through something maybe that is a first time, or we don't know what to do, or the other person too, being able to show that kindness to another person is really important. We very often are not alone. We're, the feelings and thoughts that we have, others have them too. And so remembering that shows that kindness to us and then the people that maybe we're experiencing something with as well.
So the first thing I thought of when you were saying that is like kind of showing grace, right, to yourself and maybe to others, where, oh, this moment is hard, this is triggering me, I'm frustrated, and kind of giving that grace and stepping back. Is that kind of something to consider in this mindfulness journey?
Definitely. Like, so for example, if you're taking a math test and you're sitting there and you're thinking, I'm horrible at math and I'm going to fail this test. And maybe you're thinking everybody else is going to do great and they love math or they're really good at math. But the person right next to you is probably thinking the exact same thing and feeling those same like worried, stressed kind of emotions. And so being able to have that grace or kindness or compassion for the person sitting next to you, saying, we're both doing the best that we can, that really helps soften your own experience of thinking, hopefully they're thinking the same thing about me too. They're doing the best that they can.
Almost a little bit like the law of attraction. Well, it's like thinking positive things and kind of just like putting it into the universe. Like stop with the negative self-talk, right? It's a struggle.
It is. And part of the difficult part with that is not so much of forcing yourself to change your thoughts, but it's recognizing when you have them.
Mm.
So mindfulness isn't about force or change, right? It's just about seeing what's there. So when you notice that thought that comes in, that's maybe a negative self-talk or an emotion that's maybe unpleasant, being able to just recognize it and see if it's something that you can experience without pushing it away, shoving it away, or saying, oh, that's wrong, but just acknowledging it and letting yourself move to the next thought or the next emotion and being able to just soften a little bit of that everyday self-talk and emotion that we go through, that we all go through as humans. That's part of our human experience.
Yeah. Well, and so what would your advice be for teenagers and even adults who maybe just don't like confronting emotion? I don't want to feel this. I don't want to acknowledge this. I'm just going to push it down, suppress it, and just ignore it and go on with my day. How can mindfulness help them kind of confront that? Because historically, people don't like confronting emotions because they're uncomfortable, they're hard to deal with. And so, as someone who's trying to be cognizant of this, what would your advice be or tips or tricks to help with that?
So as we practice mindfulness, a lot of it is starting to just learn how our bodies and our minds and our emotions work. So when you start to identify what those really strong, unpleasant emotions feel like in your body. So for example, when I start to feel angry, I get tense shoulders and I usually clench my jaw. And I notice that my fists are clenched too, right? So I can feel it in my body that something's coming. So I learned to start recognizing emotion. And then once I recognize it, I want to be able to keep my balance during that emotion. Because, like you said, all of the right things, if you will, we try to hide them, we avoid them, right? We do anything else but feel this uncomfortable emotion. None of us like to feel uncomfortable, right? So instead of avoiding, pushing, hiding, because we've learned that those things don't work, the emotion does stay there or come back. Instead, if we can recognize and say, I'm feeling angry, and actually be able to recognize that we're feeling it, then we can have more balance by doing certain things. So, for example, one of the easiest things is being able to recognize that you're feeling an emotion. Or excuse me, it's not easy necessarily to recognize. Once you've recognized that you've had a strong emotion, is to take 3 deep mindful breaths. So you can do this wherever you are. If it's before a test in school, if you're driving down the freeway and somebody cuts you off, if you know where you're stopped at a red light and you're late for somewhere and you really want to go, anywhere you can do this, right? So what you want to do is take a stop, mindfully take a deep breath in and out through your nose, and actually pay attention to how it feels as you're breathing. So for example, if we just took a deep breath for us here and whoever's listening, just stop what you're doing by just setting something down. Take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your nose. We're going to do this 2 more times. In and out. In and out. This just gives us a moment to recognize what's happening and to regain our balance. For example, how are you guys feeling now?
Feel like definitely less tense, just like you're just pushing out some of the tension. It's kind
Yeah.
of like peaceful
More
feeling.
relaxed.
Yeah.
Yeah. More relaxed, less like, yeah, tight, I guess is the word to say.
Great. So every
It
time you take, yeah,
works.
right? Like, yay, it works. So every time you feel, and sometimes it could be a pleasant emotion. I mean, we love feeling pleasant emotions, but maybe we're feeling really excited and we have a lot of energy in the middle of class, right? And you're thinking, I just want to get this energy out. But right now, my teacher's trying to teach me social studies and I'm getting in trouble. So sometimes it's not an unpleasant thing. It's just a time that where we need to focus on something else. And so being able to take those 3 mindful breaths also help us gain our balance when we have strong, pleasant emotions as well. It's just we usually don't want to stop those ones.
That's fair. Love it. And so how does this practice of mindfulness, how could this tie in to like gratitude and how people could show and maybe recognize gratitude in their lives a little more? Because you nailed it on the head, right? Like we live in a society of negative self-talk and we're never good enough because we always have to achieve that next level, and kind of this fixation on what we don't have versus what we do have, and being grateful in the moment for our talents, our skills, the things we have, the relationships, the people, right? Like there's so many things that we can be grateful for. And so how can mindfulness tie into gratitude and help us kind of recenter into owning who we are and being grateful for the things we have?
Yeah. So being able to practice gratitude, right? So we've talked a little bit more about showing kindness and compassion for other people and ourselves. And being able to extend that in a way of gratitude actually helps us be happier and more resilient when we have things that are hard for us that happen. We can when hard things happen, it's easier for us. Not saying it's easy, but it's easier for us to then be able to get back to a place of balance because we can recognize that there are still good things happening. So some of the things that we can do to practice gratitude, right? We want to be able to practice things. Um, excuse me, they're going to be actually pretty small things that take kind of like a daily dose of medicine, right? So when we're feeling physical harm or distress, we take medicine. So a lot of times our minds or our emotions need medicine too. And gratitude is actually a form of medicine, if you will, for those parts of our bodies. So a daily dose, if you will. You want to take your daily vitamins. We want to do our gratitude practice every day. Okay. So these are things like being able to express thank you to someone who does something for you. And I'm not talking about grand things, although those are good too. Things like someone held the door open for me, or someone let me walk by them when they could have just walked forward. It's something like a teacher who said, "You did good today," and being able to then respond and say, "Thank you." Actually using the words thank you to people, that will make a big difference. Things like writing notes of gratitude, being able to just notice when someone has maybe done something that's hard in their own life and letting them know that they did a good job and that you're grateful that you got to see it or hear about it. Maybe it's a friend who called to say, "Oh, this thing happened and I didn't know what to do. So I decided to do this." And maybe it was really hard for them and they did it the best that they could in that circumstance. Being able to help them recognize that they did a good job, just that, writing a note of gratitude. Another simple one I actually really enjoy. Um, you can probably tell I spend a lot of time in the car because a lot of my examples have been while we're in the vehicle. But I think we all spend time in cars though. I think, whether we're a passenger or a driver, when you're in the car and maybe you're stopped at a red light, see if you can think of 3 things that you're grateful for. one for each color of the stoplight, right? They can be big, small, whatever it is. But every time you're at a stoplight, think of 3 things that you're grateful for. So it could be the beauty that's around you. It could be an individual. It could be that you're on time that day. You know, whatever it is, I want you to think of 3 things that you're grateful for every time you get to a stoplight. So these are just some of the ways that you can practice gratitude every day. It could even be simple as when you eat a meal, thinking about what foods you're grateful for. And maybe it's not what you're eating at that moment. Maybe you're eating broccoli and you really don't like broccoli. Maybe it's, I'm really grateful for pizza and for French fries or whatever it is. But maybe when you're eating, you can think of things that you're grateful for. It's also a really great way to start a conversation for a parent to kids. So when you're in the car and you need a way to start a conversation that's not revolved around getting homework done or chores, maybe it's what happened today that you were grateful for? Or at the dinner table, what's something that happened this week or something that you experienced that you're grateful for? So it's a great conversation starter too, to help with building a relationship between a parent and child or siblings. Those are some more ideas of ways we can practice gratitude in kind of our day-to-day without a whole lot of effort kind of ways.
Well, I love that. And I think that's where sometimes, overwhelm kicks in for adults, children. Oh, that's just one more thing I have to add to my list. But these are simple ways, right? Like you're already out there doing it. You can just say thank you to the person that holds the door open for you. Or, hey, I'm driving to pick the kids up from school. Stoplight, 3 things I'm grateful for, right? Like you're already there in the moment. That's not adding extra time or another to do to your list. It's just a matter of, like you said, being mindful, being present, and recognizing, right? And I love that idea of like the conversation starter. So we do something at our house when we have my stepson that's called High Low Buffalo. And basically what it is like the best part of your day, the worst part of your day, and something random that happened, right? Like high low buffalo. And so it kind of brings that centeredness too, to like, hey, let's talk about your day. Well, that was cool. Or, oh, that was hard, but look, you got through it. Like, good job, and it's kind of that, not necessarily gratitude, but mindfulness of, hey, look what you did today. And whoa, that was random, right? And it kind of allows us all to pay a little more attention to our day and be on the lookout for, hey, this was a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, just with the whole idea of mindfulness, if you're just taking the time to just slow down and be more aware, it's probably a lot easier to notice little things that maybe we just tend to take for granted. But if you're just present and in the moment and just kind of absorbing what's around you, it's like, oh, wow, I guess I never thought about being grateful for that particular thing, but I absolutely am, right? So I think in my mind, gratefulness or gratitude and mindfulness are pretty closely tied together.
Yes, in fact, so the program that I teach for kids is called Learning to Breathe. And excuse me, it's a program that focuses on breathe as an acronym. So each time I'm there, we study a different letter that stands for something else. So every single time we have one of these discussions or these lessons, we practice a gratitude or a compassion practice at the end of every single one, because it's that important. They're that connected. To have balance, true balance, we want to be able to have that compassion and kindness and gratitude for not only ourselves and what we can do, but for others, because it is such a big deal as part of a practice with mindfulness.
Yeah, for sure. And so if there are any parents that are listening thinking, oh man, my kid needs some mindfulness in their life, or oh, this would help my family so much. Do you offer like the program that parents could enroll in, or are you strictly just teaching at schools?
I definitely can do an adult course or a kids course. It's a little bit harder to do them together because parents and children relate to different things. And So being able to just focus on what kids are experiencing or just focusing on what adults are experiencing actually makes a really big difference in how people learn about mindfulness. But if that's something that people are interested in, they can go to my website, which is mentoringwithmichelle with 2Ls.com. And there's a tab there that talks about creating their own course. So we just need about 6 to 8 people to create one, and we can start a program, whether you are on your own or you know others that you want to join in. That's something that we can discuss if you have interest. So if you know you have enough people to start your own group, great, we'll do it. Or if you need others to kind of join in with you, we'll find some other people too. So
Are
I
you
love that.
local only, or do you do anything virtual?
So virtual is definitely a great way to do it. I'm located in Southern Davis County. And so a lot of people though are all over the place. And so virtual is a great way to be able to reach more people. And all of the things that we do in this program can be done virtually and I've done the classes virtually before. So if that's something that they're interested in, they have a family member in Idaho and another one in California, and they're here in Utah, great. We can go ahead and do that too.
That's awesome. And so, yeah, for maybe those homeschool parents that are listening and you feel like, hey, there's a social emotional piece to my kids' learning that I'm missing. I wonder if I could get some of my homeschool co-op groups together. This might be a good opportunity for them all to just, yeah, connect virtually and learn to breathe, right? And bring in this mindfulness practice, because I think it's something that we as a society at large can benefit from, right? Like, I think we're in the generation where a lot of adults never even learned how to self-regulate or confront emotions, or all the things. Like, it's fascinating to me. The more that I learn, I'm like, oh yeah, why was this never taught when I was a kid, right? Like, this could have helped with this and this, and I could be so much further ahead, right? So I think it's an opportunity for adults and children alike to just continue learning and continue growing. And that's something that we emphasize a lot at our school, is just the lifelong learning, the growth and the momentum that you can get from learning something new. And this is a huge piece that I think would benefit adults and children alike. So we'll be sure to include that information in the show notes so that any parent that is interested can definitely reach out to Michelle, contact her about the possibility of doing this course, because I just gratitude, mindfulness, like all of it. It's like I practice it in my life. I have a journal where I write down, like, the things I was grateful for that week, right? Because it's like life is mundane and there's a lot of monotony. And so finding those moments of, oh, hey, this was good this week is just super helpful. So, and I'm going to test the stoplight idea, because I tend to be one where, I'm like, these people can't hear me, but I'm annoyed. And I'm like, seriously, just like get in the next lane or make a turn. And you are so slow. Right. And they're not hearing me, but I'm saying this out loud out of frustration. So when I hit the stoplight, that might be a good practice for me. So
I'm gonna try it out too, because I like that idea. I'm in the car a lot, travel pretty much on a weekly basis. And yeah, but something that resonated with me though is just the gratitude as a medication almost. There's a reason why groups like AA use that as such a big piece, because there's something healing about it, right? You're not so focused on your selfishness and the problems that you feel like you're having when you're outwardly focusing on all the things that are around you that are amazing, the things that make our life great. Like, it's easy to always focus on the negative. So I like that.
Yeah, science has actually proven that practicing mindfulness can change the brain. And so, especially for these students who are still developing their adult brain, it's the best time to start practicing, because it will be something that will stick with them as they continue to grow and develop. And as we as adults, where our brains are a little bit harder to change, it's still possible. And they've proven that mindfulness actually helps change the brain. And so practicing gratitude is a great way to help our brains develop in a way that we actually want them to, in a way that will help us in our day to day.
Yeah. I love that. And I also loved the idea of like expressing, the gratitude to other people. And it's so cool kind of what happens when you do something for someone, they say thank you, or you compliment someone, they say thank you, right? It's this exchange of like, oh, hey, that was cool. Like that little boost of like dopamine hit, right?
Mhm.
That it's like, hey, that was cool, right? I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was just having a like just super busy week, overwhelmed, stressed. And I get in my car and I start driving. And then I notice there's like a little note tucked into my windshield wipers. And I'm thinking, oh, great, there's damage on my car. Somebody left their insurance information because it was a hit and run, blah, 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 right? So I pull over, get out, I grab the note, and it was actually just a nice note of like, have a great day. And I really like your car and it makes me happy to see it here. And I was like, what? And it totally like flipped my mood. Right. And I was like, and that was, you can tell that somebody took their time to like cut out a piece of like a corner of an envelope that they must have had mail in their car. They took the time to write that note. And it was just like, oh, hey, okay. So that was like a good reminder to me to be like, all right, not everything, we tend to catastrophize things because you get busy, the overwhelm, the stress, and your first response is, what else? Right. But if we can show and express the gratitude, then I think it can turn your day around. It can turn somebody else's day around. And I don't know. I just think it's really cool and I love it. So thank you for sharing some of those tips. Are there any other nuggets of wisdom you would have for parents who maybe are stuck in that kind of a fixed mindset when it comes to mindfulness, gratitude, those type of things?
Probably my words for parents would be you're doing the best that you can, and try to remember that as you go through your day to day. If you're a little bit late picking up the kids, or dinner's just a little bit burnt, or maybe you didn't say quite what you wanted to say to your kid when they told you that they were having a bad day, that it's okay. You're doing the best that you can. And to be able to feel that gratitude for your own abilities, this takes a lot of practice. I'm a new parent. I was recently married and I now have two beautiful little girls, and I'm constantly having to remind myself of this. So this is a daily practice for me as well, where I have to think about, okay, you are definitely doing the best you can, and sometimes it looks horribly different than what you want it to. And that's okay. That's part of this experience too, and your kids are going to be okay. Like they're going to be okay with a little bit of burnt, and they're going to be okay with standing in line for an extra few minutes, and it'll work out. And to be able to take your 3 mindful breaths, I do this all the time. It's not just something that I tell my clients and my students. It's something that I do all the time. I'm taking those mindful breaths to try and help me remember that I also need that compassion and positive self-talk too.
I love that. Thank you. I think that's great advice for adults and kids alike, because we do tend to, like I said, just go to that negative space of, oh, you're an idiot. Why did you say it that way? Right? It's so easy to do. And
Yep.
so, but like you said, it takes practice. There's moments when I find myself saying, nope, don't say that to yourself. Would you say that to your best friend? No. So don't say it to yourself. Right. And you have to kind of rein it in, but it's a practice, and we're never going to be perfect at it. It's going to have some hiccups and bumps and detours along the way, but if you're trying, I think that's the biggest part, right? I heard the phrase progress, not perfection, and I loved that, because I think we default to, well, I have to be perfect at this, and if I'm not, then I'm not enough, right? But no, if you're trying, that's half the battle. So give yourself
And
some great parents.
I'm with you. I'm with you, Ange. And just something that Michelle said in the very, very beginning of like, even in the practice of mindfulness, just noticing that you have the negative emotions, like, don't necessarily try to like, I need to change this, I need to be better. Like, just the fact that you're noticing that you're having it, I think is probably a good first step. So
And that will
for sure.
take a little bit of time, right? You so and that too, like give yourself some compassion and some patience with how you're going when you just recognize it. Oh, look, I am feeling really upset at my kids right now. Or, you know, I can hear my thoughts going a mile a minute on all the things I need to be doing, but instead I'm sitting here trying to focus on what's right in front of me. And that, again, it takes practice. So being able to take your mindful breath and a little bit of, I'm doing the best that I can. And this is the most important thing for me to be doing right now. And then being able to, okay, now let's move forward, right? You got this. We can do this, guys. Remember that too. You can do this.
Yes. And you know, you might get better and better at it. Maybe you only have to take mindful breaths 5 times a day instead of 150, right? Like, it's the progress. Well, thanks so much, Michelle, for joining us. I really appreciate your insights and helpful tips, especially as we approach this, you know, Thanksgiving season of gratitude and mindfulness. So thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Michelle.